Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome. This is the Podcaster Community Show, short conversations that are not just about podcasting, because I like to take the scenic route. Our guest today is Aaradhya Tiwari. Welcome, Aaradhya. How are you this evening? You're way ahead of me.
Yeah, it's evening here, almost night, and I am wonderful. I had a good day. I went out with my friends. I enjoyed the day. So, yeah, it's been a good day for me. How are you?
I'm good. It's my late morning coming up on lunchtime. I often say people are rolling their eyes who listen a lot. Oh no, he's going to say the thing about, I love that this is even possible, that we, like literally me and you, but just any two people, that we can have these conversations around the world. I have one this evening, theoretically, from somebody in New Zealand who got quarantined and is holed up for COVID, but hopefully they're doing well. But just to be able to find somebody and connect with them and then have a conversation, really, I think is very special. Um, what would the people from the 1300s think about this, right? So I know that you have a podcast, and the first thing I want to say is congratulations on reaching 17 episodes. I think everybody listening and you and I know that podcasting is lonely. Like, you got to do it all by yourself. Even when you have a guest, there's a lot, and you're always thinking, should I do this part? Should I do that? What should I should like? I don't do intro music. Should I have music? Should I record? There's all these pieces, and I know for me, I'm guessing also for you, our drive to make it really good can be really challenging. So I guess the first question I have for you is about, you, like you went 10 or 12 episodes and then you started bringing guests onto your show. And was that an intentional transition, or were you always imagining from the very beginning that you would want to have conversations in the podcast, or was it originally meant to be just your voice, or how did that change occur?
So the thing was, my podcast started as me talking about stories and how they come up, and anything and everything. There was no such topic in mind because, stories don't have a particular topic, and for me, stories are everything. Stories, like, just hearing other people's stories is very different from talking about my own. So I had this plan that maybe I can develop some episodes where I am talking about stories, so that, if I'm approaching new people, they would know they have some sort of idea of what is going to happen here, and, what they're going to deal with here. So that, I think, that was the basic idea. And also there was a little bit of resistance on, like, going out to people and asking them, would you like to come to my podcast? Because that is a very scary part when you're just starting out, that, oh my god, what if they say no? Oh my
Mm.
god, what if they
Well,
just,
what if they say no? Who cares? Like, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, now I have gotten like, now I'm like, okay, what if they don't reply? It's okay. But before, in the beginning, you're just scared of even just like doing that, posting that episode. Okay,
mm.
I'm gonna hit post. That is also very difficult. So I think that was how it all evolved, from me talking about stories to other people coming here and talking about their stories.
Mm. I'm thinking that I'm not sure if I've talked about this on a podcast episode. I'm thinking that there's a similar, what do writers call it, the fear of the blank page. And painters, I've read painters talk about, just cover the canvas, just get something on there so you're not looking at blank canvas, because you can paint over it later if it's the wrong color. And I'm wondering, you're nodding along. Nobody can hear that, but you're nodding along. Do you feel like the initial podcasts were your way to just cover the canvas, and then when the world didn't burn down after you published an episode, you're like, oh, all right, I guess it's safe to do this a few more times? Do you feel like those early episodes you just get something up there?
Yeah, it was like to get the ball rolling, because if I wasn't there to even publish one episode, then I wouldn't have done that anyhow. Like, it would be a podcast with zero episodes if I wouldn't have come out and just hit post. So that was like to just get the ball rolling, and, just like you said, painting the canvas, some things, just going out there and just typing something, just like stories. When you're writing something and you're just at a writer's block, you are said to write at least something. Just go ahead and write blabber shit. You just go ahead and do something, and that's it. And I think that's how my podcast started as well. I was like, I can just write something. It doesn't have to be perfect. I can record that, and that's it. And no, it's not like first episode people are gonna come around and like criticize it for how how not perfect it is. So I think that's how first episode came out, with me not obsessing over the perfection part of it, and just like, I'm gonna hit post, that's it, I'm running away after this.
Hmm. Have you found you mentioned the perfectionist, and I totally understand. I have the same. It's almost obsessive compulsive. The drive to,
Yeah,
well, I could make this better.
yeah,
I could do a better job of this. I could
yeah.
fix this piece. I could change that piece. I could have transcript. All these things I could do. Do you find that that's come back around? So it sounds like you kind of got that monster under control. And then when you brought in people for conversations, did the monster come back? But now it's got like a new face or a new set of horns or something.
Yeah, so it's like when I'm doing podcast interviews with people I somewhat know, like people who are maybe I've known from a relative, known from a friend. So they are people I've conversed for like once or twice. For them, it's like, okay, they are people I know. I can do this. I can get a good podcast out of them, and I don't have to make it perfect because it's gonna be a conversation, and then it just goes on very smoothly. The resistance isn't coming that much. But when I am going out to take an interview of a person I barely know, just by their, like, I've only seen their social media, or I've only seen their website and all, then oh my god, the perfection is unreal. I'm like, oh, maybe I should write down some questions, maybe I should do this, maybe I should ask them if they're comfortable with it or not. And there's just
Hmm.
so much questioning going around until it happens, and then it's just like, okay, just let it go and do it. Now it's now and never, and if it fucks it up, and then it fucks it up, that just no, there's no going back here from here. And after that also, when the editing part comes in, so now I have stopped editing. I'm like, let it be real, let it be,
Hmm.
just let it. This is what a conversation is like. You would just don't cut out a conversation. So now it's just real, and what I am hearing, people are gonna hear it. So that's it,
Hmm.
that's where it goes.
You're talking my language now. The idea that I actually don't hear a lot of people talk about how do I make my podcast sound authentic. People figure out pretty quick. Well, the
Yeah,
way to sound authentic is to just be yourself. I've always wondered what would happen if I tried to do. I have a few different shows and I've done some different work, but it's all basically the same
yeah,
version of me. It's just me, like
yeah,
doing my, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about this. And I've always wondered what would happen if I tried to do something very different. Like if I tried to,
yeah.
I don't know, come across in audio as a tiny person. Like I don't know how I would do that. I have to change my entire personality to like it, and it. You're laughing because it doesn't fit what you're looking at. But have you ever thought about what I was going to say? What sort of persona you wanted to convey, or had you always thought, I'm just gonna, it's gonna be transparent, it's just gonna be me.
The thing was, when I started with podcast, the first idea was doing a marketing podcast. So I've been always been, uh, centered towards how marketing is, and I've read Seth
Hmm.
Godin's "This is Marketing" and all that. And I'm a business commerce major, so that just was like the basic idea. Okay, let's just start with marketing because maybe some of it, so you can start with it. Then halfway through it, I'm realizing it's not me, that okay, I know this stuff and I can talk about it, but am I really liking this, am I really into this? Then that contemplation just led me to believe that if it's not the real me, if it's not something I love to do, then it won't be authentic enough to actually go forward with it. And that's when I stopped that podcast. I think it had like 10 episodes, and I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I need to start something where I can be real. I can just talk, I can just blabber, and it would make sense.
Hmm.
And that's how Radha's podcast came forward, and I had no plan of like what I'm gonna do it there, what I'm gonna talk about, because it was like I am going to converse with the people. So that's it, that was the basic idea, and that I think that just made it real, that just made it genuine, because I had no plan and I didn't think, I have to act like this, I have to like be like that, because that's where what I'm approaching you for, that's what I'm approaching the listeners for, that
Mm.
this is what you're getting here, Aradhya, real Aradhya. And yeah, the guests will get that too.
I think that's the best way. I'm nodding along while you're talking. I think that's the best way to approach it. That's how I do it. Hey, here it is. Um, do you find that, like, I'm wondering about like where I'm looking? I wonder what you find challenging. Do you find that conversations are easier or harder, or there's no difference if you get a conversation partner that you don't agree with? Like, sometimes people, uh, like podcasters, like, doesn't happen to me, but I could say, oh, I have a hard time when the guest disagrees with everything I say. That's not my personal situation, but that could happen. I'm wondering if you've experienced the different kinds of conversations that challenge you, and maybe you don't want to go
um,
toward those conversations, or you do go toward them.
I mean, fortunately, unfortunately, maybe I don't approach those kind of people that I contradict perspectives with yet. Like, it might be that I am not that well versed in that kind of topic, and the person is like very knowledgeable in that, and I am just lost, I'm at a loss of words of what to say to that person. But there's also the thing about perspective, that not everybody is going to have the same perspective as me. And and that's okay, because I think that just what makes the conversation interesting, and carry it forward effortlessly, because there are times where the person I'm interviewing would say things that I might not agree with, or maybe there's something that I might change about it. But accepting that and acknowledging that perspective really makes a difference, because then you're like, okay, I get you, and that is a very different perspective you like put in the picture. So that
Hmm.
I think really makes a whole lot of difference in the conversation, that okay, there are people I agree with, but there are people I don't. And that I think is the essence of a conversation, where people are coming around and they have different perspectives, different views, and different opinions, and they can talk freely about it without any kind of judgment.
Are you also a podcast listener? Like, do you particularly follow certain kinds? Like, what are some? What are some? Like, give me a. I want to say if there's this painter who like does point a list. Just give me some random points of like I really like to listen to, and I don't
Okay.
like to listen to.
So I mostly listen to like those positive and the self self love and self awareness podcast. There's a podcast my friend does. It's called Pinch of Positivity. So it's like just accepting yourself and being positive about everything around you, being grateful. And there's a consulting podcast I listen to. That's also a friend of mine. I mostly listen to my friends. I and
That's a good point.
there's Seth Godin's podcast. I've listened to that as well. Tim Ferriss. So yeah, I listen to podcasts time to time. I won't say I'm like a very keen listener who does that every day. But yeah, I do listen to those podcasts, because I like to listen to things that make me feel good, and like I feel that I'm gaining something from it. So yeah, so that's what I go for.
I like the phrase listening to feel good. Like I want to
Yeah,
listen to things that make me feel good. And sometimes I do that. Mostly I listen to things because I'm passionately curious. So I want to hear the conversation with the person that I can't get a hold of. And like, oh, all right, I'm like I call it like skip conversations. I can't talk to that person, but I can listen to the person who talked to that person.
yeah,
Um, so it's interesting. Always, yeah, I find it's always interesting to hear what other podcasters do to sort of energize and find ideas.
yeah.
So, are there other things you do? You look like you're going to say something.
Other things I do, as in like in
Yeah,
what.
to recharge. Like, like me, I say, oh, I go for a walk. Like, I'll go out and perambulate, and then come back. Like, where's my pen? I got to write this stuff down. Do you walk? Do you exercise? Like, what is it that you do to recharge?
I mean, for that imagination and for those creative juices, I think I mostly go out and observe. I would just go out and sit down at a place, and I would just observe people, observe
Mm,
around me, or like the things that are happening. And there's this small things that we don't realize. We just pass by. and when we are like so busy with life. So when I'm like, okay, maybe I can just go out and sit and eat something and just look at people. That's like, I think, my best pastime because then I can get those imagination flowing and write stories. I carry my phone everywhere, so I just open the notes app. I have an idea. I'm like, I'm
Mm,
writing this down before I forget it. So I think that really works out because any time of the day, I'm just writing in my phone. Okay, I don't want to forget this. Let's just type it down.
mm. I think that's a very wise. I've heard other people describe what you're describing as something called sit spotting. Like, I'm sitting in one spot and I'm
Yeah,
looking at other people. And but more generally, it's mindfulness practice to just sit and be mindful of what's going on instead of moving
yeah,
mindlessly through one's day. And I don't know if you've done enough conversations yet for the podcast. This might be a little bit early to ask this question, but do you find that doing that helps you? Like, are you getting better at observing the conversation and observing the person you're talking with?
yeah. I mean, that like talking to more people definitely helps a lot in podcasts, particularly because sometimes there are things that you don't like realize until you have done that. And
Hmm.
in podcast, it was the same for me. Like when I started taking guest interviews, I was like very nervous and jittery, and I used to write so many questions, and at the end I would realize that didn't even have to ask so many, and we could have just kept the conversation flowing like it was. And I just that just breaks the rhythm. And then slowly I realized maybe I even don't need a question to start with. I can just go on with like just how it would be like I am meeting a person in real life. Would I
Hmm.
write down a question and then go ask them that? No, I won't. So then why am I doing it here? So I think that is something I've learned, in this journey of taking guest interviews, where now I don't plan things like a micromanage things beforehand. I'm just YOLO kind of situation. So I'm going there and I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do this. We are going to see what's going to happen next.
I haven't heard YOLO in ages because that tends to get used more in real life. I had a close friend. We were in a big city, and she was like, we were trying to cross the street. She's like YOLO, and just went out in the traffic. And I was like, oh my, whoa! You only live once, maybe literally, if you walk out into traffic. Nice YOLO drop. Do you? I love that you're talking about not writing down questions, and because I don't do that. I have a giant piece of paper in front of me, but it's a giant checklist. It's not,
Yeah, I do
material that
that.
I've written.
Yeah, I mean, writing things down that a person have said, that makes a lot of difference. Other than practicing things beforehand doesn't really help. And I used to do that before. So
Yeah, it's not the same experience.
yeah,
My personal experience of me standing in front of a mirror like this is what I'm going to say
doesn't
doesn't
go
carry
that
through.
way. It doesn't go that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm busy panicking. Ah! Yeah, oh, so many good things. Let's see. How about I don't know, is there anything else that's top of mind for you or questions that you had?
I mean, yeah, just talking about the how preparation and like how do you come forward with podcasts and all. So yeah, like so before I used to think that the podcast should be very long, and it should be very, you have to chat with the person for a long time to really understand what they're talking about. But then I realized maybe the person is gonna focus on one question only. Like maybe I can ask them something and they're gonna go talk about that. And when then I realized the real life situation. Like if I'm meeting that person in real life and I have only a limited time, are you gonna talk about 10 topics or are you gonna focus on one? So that's how I think, that's like how I evolved through it. That okay, that person is sitting with you in real life, you're having coffee. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna bombard them with questions? Or are you gonna just be like, okay, just tell me about yourself. What's up?
Yeah. How's that
What's going
coffee,
on?
right?
So I think that just helped a lot in gaining that confidence as well.
Terrific. I always hate to say it, but I think that's a great place to stop. I think you're going to be doing great things. I've listened to a couple episodes, and I think you're well on your way. So I wish you the best of luck. And would normally say, "Have a great day," except it's soon time to go to sleep. So have a great tomorrow. Thank you for taking the time to join me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a wonderful conversation, as I said. So, yeah, it was wonderful.